I have seen a lot of movies, but I have also read a lot of books. My name is Sarah Ellen, and I want to talk about some of the books that I have read that I really enjoyed, and I think you guys would also enjoy. Slight disclaimer before I start into this, there will be spoilers for all of these books, so I am going to list the titles and authors of all of them in the description, just in case you're planning on reading them, or you are in the middle of them and I ruin something for you. If I do, this is your warning now. I'm really sorry about that, but these are really good, and if I do spoil something for you and it makes you want to read them more, yay! I really don't have any sort of genre preference myself, so I'm not going to have a genre preference in this video. I'm just going to cover as many books as I like, and I think that you would like as well. These are the 8 books that I am going to talk about in this video. As you can tell, some of them are older than others and bigger than others, so let's go. Starting off strong with a book that probably changed the trajectory of my life personally. The Hunger Games. I love this book so much. I love this book so much to the point that I have 3 copies of this book because of how much I wear through them. Do I throw them away? Absolutely not. The spine is so broken. It has like lipstick on the side. I have read the Hunger Games book on its own maybe 10 times. I've read the whole series in full 6 or 7 times. I love the Hunger Games so much. I love the Hunger Games for so many reasons. I watched the movies first, and I think that if the movies weren't such a perfect adaptation, I wouldn't have actually ever read the book, but it is such an incredible film that I was like, obviously I gotta read the book. I was like 16 when I read the book for the first time, and that was in 2020, so I was a little bit older when I got to these books. I just think that yes, the story itself is incredible, but all of the nuances and all of what Suzanne Collins is really trying to say comes across so well. Like, you can tell her stance on so many things. You can tell her stance on capitalism, you can tell her stance on law enforcement. You can really see how she feels about the class system, especially the class system in America. Candace Everdeen, while she has been sort of memed in the past for her, like, I'm not like other girls attitude, I think that Candace Everdeen is one of the best written heroines, at least in this entire genre. In the young adult dystopian fantasy genre, Candace Everdeen is the best written. She is well-rounded, she is interesting, she learns from her own mistakes, which I feel like is a flaw in a lot of these kinds of books. Katniss in this book starts out, at least in this book, being like, I hate the capital are the worst. Everyone in the capital like deserves nothing. And ends the series with telling Gale they're people too, you know? It really changes your perspective throughout not just the book, but the series. However, this book is incredible, and I will forever be so mad that they promoted this as like a romance novel. It is not. This is not a romance novel. This is a book about capitalism and the negative implications of overly powered law enforcement and pushing down the lower and working class. I think that Suzanne Collins and her writing is just absolutely unmatched. I'm currently reading Sunrise on the Reaping. Major spoilers ahead. Major. I've gotten to the part where Luella has just died. I did cry on a bus. I was on public transportation with tears streaming down my face. That was a low for me. But I need to move on because I could talk about these books for another 20 minutes. Keeping with the theme of capitalism, The Great Gatsby. This book was stolen. School library. It wasn't so much stolen, whereas I forgot to give it back, and now it's mine. And I think that really speaks to the novel. I really liked The Great Gatsby. This is the first, I know it's technically a modern classic, but this is the first classic I ever actually read recreationally. Like, I read for fun and not after being told to by my school. I read it twice because I read it when I was about 14, and then I had to read it again when I was about 17 in school, which I thought was good because I had a better grasp on it then anyway. But I still really enjoyed it. I think that Nick and Gatsby are in love. That was my takeaway from this book, is that Nick and Gatsby are deeply in love. I also deeply hate F. Scott Fitzgerald. If you don't know anything about F. Scott Fitzgerald, you should look it up. This man treated his wife horribly, and then based Daisy off of her. Daisy, the literal villain, I'm so sorry, she's the villain of this book. Gatsby and Daisy are the villains. He stole letters that Zelda Fitzgerald had written and sent and put them in this book and gave her no credit. That speech that Daisy does that says, I hope that she'll be a beautiful fool. Zelda Fitzgerald's letters. Not him. He did not come up with this. No man could come up with that. I really enjoyed this book. I think that the imagery with the eyes of God during the Great Depression is very interesting and a very good take on the era, and about the fact that it is the lower class, the people who have the eyes of God facing them, who really feel the pressure of religion, as opposed to the people on the East and West Egg who can sort of turn their backs on that part of the world in its entirety because they're reveling in their own fun. I do think, or sin as it would be interpreted, I did enjoy it. I think that F. Scott Fitzgerald is a terrible, terrible man, and I really hope that he is rotting right now. This, however, good book. Steal it though. Don't give the estate money. I just like to really quickly say I'm not promoting theft. The cover of this book both goes with my outfit and is probably the ugliest book cover I own. I remember when I was reading this book, I was embarrassed. That's how ugly the book cover is. Even though the book itself is actually like really good. And I think the reason it didn't get as much traction as other books by this author have gotten is because the book cover is atrocious. You ready? Be prepared. This is The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. Now, the title is also absolutely terrible. It is a horrible title. It is a horrible cover. I bought this book because I love Holly Black and I read the entire Cruel Prince series, which I adored. I read the entire 3 books in like 2 weeks. I bought this book because, you know what? This has to be terrible. Like, every author has one book that you're like, okay, that could have, stayed in the laptop. No one needed to read that. So I was like, obviously that's why the cover is so terrible, because she's trying to deter people from reading it. Obviously, she's so smart. This book is so good. This story is incredible. Why does it look like this? Why is it named this? I have tried promoting this book to people since I read it, but nobody will bite. No one will read it. It is basically, okay, it opens with Tana, and she wakes up after a party and everyone around her is dead. She's the only survivor of the massacre at this party, and it was vampires that did the massacre. And it basically takes her on a journey of not knowing whether or not she's been bitten or turned. So she journeys to this place called a Coldtown, which is where people who have been bitten by vampires and don't know whether or not they've turned or are vampires or want to be bitten and turned go, and they're like quarantined. The thing I will say about this book, which I really love, is that it's almost like a response to the whole romanticization of vampires that Twilight had, where it basically made vampires like kind of weak. Love Twilight, firstly, but kind of weak. It was like, these vampires do not sparkle. They do not fall in love. They do not yearn. They want to kill you. They will want to bite you. They want to drain you. Along the way, she meets these like really weird twins that are like obsessed with becoming vampires. I say much more because then it would like just ruin the book, not just spoil it, but fabulous book. Please read it. I need someone else to have read this. Please read this and comment that you read it and we can be friends. This is the only hardcover of the bunch. This is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book was actually not as well received as I thought it was. I saw this book a lot online and people being like, you should read it, you should read it, you should read it. So I was like, oh my god guys, fine, I'll read it. And then once I read it and I loved it and I was like, this is actually so good. Like, it's a little bit less deep than I think it thinks it is, but it's really, really good. It has a really solid message. And I go online and everyone's like, this book is the worst thing ever. Like, it's so like into itself. Guys, it's a good book with a nice message. Let's relax, please. It's about a woman called Nora who has tons of regrets in her life and she's super depressed and she decides that she is going to end her life. And while ending her life, she midway through dying basically, winds up in this place called the Midnight Library, where it is eternally midnight and she can check out any book in this library and basically see what her life would be like if she made different choices. You follow Nora as she goes through this journey where she revisits what it would have been like if she had married her long-term boyfriend she had broken up with, and actually sees that the life that he was giving her was not something she ever wanted. She winds up working in a pub in the middle of England, and she's like, she comes to the realization that she was not actually in love with him. But he was never in love with her. He was in love with his own dream, and she was just following along with his dream. The message of this book is sort of to value where you are and not regret the choices that you've made, because you always made them for a reason, and you are where you are for a reason. And I think that's actually quite nice. Yes, it's not as deep, like it doesn't hit as hard, and it's not as philosophical as I think a lot of people expected it to be, but it is still a very, very nice message. And if you're in like a tough place, or you're not feeling the best, let's say, I think this is actually a pretty handy book to read. Also because while this looks quite thick because it is a hardback, it is just under 300 pages. Like, it's not a long book either. So I think that, especially if you're in a sort of depressive episode where you really don't have any motivation, you don't want to do anything, the Midnight Library is a good choice because it's not a long commitment. It's under 300 pages. It has a very nice message and it's easy to read. That's another thing. I think a lot of the times people think that books should be difficult to read if they have meaning. A lot of books don't need to be hard to read to have meaning, guys. Books can hold meaning for anyone, for any reason. Huge pivot, both plot-wise and genre-wise for this next one. Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is her debut novel. Can we all just take a second for that? This is her debut novel. This is the first book that this woman has ever come out with. Victoria, if you're watching this, I need the hardcover version of this. I could not find it anywhere. I will spend any amount of money. Just tell me where to go, because it was not available in eSINs and I could not find it online. I love this book so much. This is the book that got me back into reading. If you're someone who reads a lot of books, you know that eventually you do kind of hit a wall where you feel like you've just consumed so much literary media that you just can't anymore, and you stop reading, or you read one book and it's just so hard to get through and it doesn't catch you early enough that you can't read. You just can't for like months. Like, I hadn't read a book in like 3 months, and then I was in my school library this is like back in secondary school. Like, I've read this book so many times since then, but this is years ago, and I was in my school library and I picked this up and they were like, oh yeah, we just got some new books in. Picked it up, was like, I'm gonna read this, whatever. Went home, I read this book in 3 days. Could not put it down. Picked it up on the Friday, finished it on the Monday night. This book is insane. It is the start to one of the best fantasy series I've ever read. It follows Mare, where she lives in a kingdom. I actually have the kingdom. I'm not gonna take it up, I'll show you. The kingdom map on my wall. She lives in the kingdom of Norta. Norta? I always say it wrong. Within this world, there's reds and silvers. Silvers have silver blood and they have powers. And she is a red, which basically means that her blood is red. She's a normal human. There is the normal silvers who sort of function as the capital people, if we're to compare it to the Hunger Games, where they are of a higher class. These people are not like the super elites, but they do have powers. They're just slightly weaker than the super elites. Mare winds up as a servant in some games between silvers. She falls. She somehow manages to fall and she should die. However, there's like, I don't know how to say this without spoiling the whole thing. It eventually turns out from this that she has powers. She has incredibly powerful powers, and she shows these in front of the king, who is a silver, and his 2 sons. She is red blood with powers. She should not exist. That's essentially the thing, and it's made very clear that if they had found her prior to it being this big public spectacle, they would have just, but they couldn't because it was in front of everybody. So thus, she is taken into the castle and has to assume the identity of a silver while hiding her red blood. This proves a lot more difficult than people think it is, and she also, while doing this, gets involved with a red revolution. It's just so good. It's so good. This book is so good. And this series is so good. This isn't even my favorite book in the series. I just needed to start with this one so that I could put you guys onto this. If anyone is interested, I will do a full in-depth video on this series with spoilers included, so I can like actually get into it. But this is the type of book where I tell you one thing, you know everything, unfortunately. Like, I tell you one detail and it'll kind of ruin the future of it for you. If there was any fantasy book or any fantasy series I'd recommend to everyone, this is an excellent fantasy book, female forward, written by a woman, not cringe. And just so everyone knows, King's Cage is my favorite. The third one in, Victoria Aveyard, I love you. Another book that I cannot believe is a debut novel is If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. If We Were Villains is geniusly written. It is told from the point of view of Oliver, who just got out of jail for a crime that he may or may not have committed. A huge crime, a murder. It's just so good. He is essentially telling the detective that put him away exactly what happened the night of the murder. And it is about this group of Shakespearean thespians in an actor's school where there is only 5 of them in the final year, and they're putting on their final play, which I can't remember if it's Macbeth or if it's King Lear. I read Macbeth the same year that I read this, so I'm actually not sure if it's Macbeth or King Lear. I need to reread this book. It's like absolutely nail-biting. It's been compared to Donna Tartt's A Secret History a lot, a book which I'm sorry to admit I have not read, but I really, really need to. So if you like that book, I would definitely recommend this. It's very dark academia. There is a sort of queer romance within it, but never really, but yes, really. There is a lot of like jumps between the future and the past that are like sort of referenced, but not really. It's split very interestingly, whereas, let me see if I can find it. Yes. Scene 11 instead of like chapter 11, and it's written in sort of a script style, so it's not like split page by page like normal chapter books are, which I thought was very, very interesting. And there's a lot of just Shakespearean paragraphs just sort of dotted throughout it, and a lot of the writing is very it is King Lear. I knew it was King Lear. I just found it. King Lear. I knew it was King Lear. I doubted myself for no reason. The reason I like this book is it's written in a way is that it's so immersive. Like, this is a very small, enclosed group of people that this book is about, and it makes you feel like you are there with them, even though you know that you would never ever be allowed in that room with them. You'd never get to experience what these people are experiencing and listen to the conversations they're having, but it's written so well that you don't even question it. You are in this room and you are talking with these people. It's genius, and Emma Rio, for a debut novel, it's incredible. This book here is my only true horror book in the collection that I would like to show you. This is Alice by Christina Henry. It is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland. Now, I do want to say before I get into this book that there is a major, major trigger warning on this book. If you are sensitive to anything, and I mean anything, you really shouldn't read it. It is not explicit, but it is very gruesome, and there's a lot of mentions of SA and that kind of thing, and I would just hate for anyone to stumble across this, think Alice in Wonderland horror retelling, and read something they're not prepared for. It's dark, but it's beyond dark. This book is vulgar and gruesome, and I really would hope that anyone is just cautious before they read it. Now, with that said, I actually very much enjoyed this book. I will read any sort of Alice in Wonderland retelling. I love Alice in Wonderland. It is one of my favourite books. This is essentially Alice in a mental institution in a place called the Old City, and that is functions as Wonderland. And she escapes with Mad Hatter of sorts, and they go through the city to try and find the White Rabbit. Alice is insane. You're being told this from the point of view of an insane person in a fantasy world. This is not our world. That's what's important, is it's modelled off of our world, but it is not. It's as if our world and Wonderland had this horrible collision. Think Alice the Madness Returns sort of vibes, the video game. I would like to point out that I only read horror books and mystery books written by women. I make a choice to do that because I think that I get uncomfortable when I'm reading violence towards women written by men. That's just me. That's my personal opinion. There is violence towards women in this book. However, I will say none of it is gratuitous. It all plays into the plot. It is all it's not all necessary for the plot per se, but it is all necessary to set the scene of what horrors the world is and what horrors Alice has endured, will endure, and is enduring. There are aspects of this that really shook me and that I found very difficult to read, but I think overall the storytelling works itself around that. So this book is essentially a journey book where Alice and the Mad Hatter's character have to go through this whole world and meet all these characters modelled off of the Wonderland characters who are evil and horrible and just want to hurt her. I think that this is a very good mirror to what it's like to be a woman in some senses, whereas it sort of feels like sometimes it can feel like you're just going through life just avoiding the horrible things because everything around you can feel horrible. So this is dark, and if you're not prepared to read something like that, do not try. I thought that I would end this video talking about a play that I actually read. This is not a book, this is not a novel, this is a play. I read this for my leaving cert. And since I have read it, I've read it twice since because I just loved it so much. This is Henrik Ibsen's A Dollhouse. Also follows a woman called Nora, which is lovely for me, you know, easy to remember. Nora is a housewife and she has no purpose. She feels like she has no purpose. Her children are taken care of by a nanny. She has to answer to her husband and sign over to all of his purchases. The entire play actually takes place within the house. She is essentially just a pretty doll for her husband to play with. There's a speech at the end, which is one of the best speeches ever written. As you can see, I have annotated the hell out of this book. She says how she was handed from her father to her husband and her children are being minded by somebody else, and she really does have no purpose for existing other than to be pretty for him. And it's upsetting and it's sad, and it has this really, I think, happy ending where, and I am going to spoil it for you because I'm so sorry, this book has been out, this novel, this play has been out since 1879, so if I spoil it, I'm so sorry, you're a little bit late to the game. It ends with her leaving. It ends with her leaving the house. She enters the house at the start of the play carrying purchases. Nothing but frivolous purchases, even though they're not frivolous. They're toys for her children. It's her only way of knowing how to truly care for them. And then she plays with her children, but she doesn't actually, you know, mind them. She doesn't care for them as a mother. She plays with them like a playmate. She brings them toys and she plays games, but the minute they need food or sleep or anything a mother would provide, the nanny takes over. That's how the play begins, with her entering the house like that. The play ends with her telling her husband that she can't do this anymore. She can't be his doll in his house, and she needs to form her own person and be her own identity if she wants to exist in this world. And it ends with her leaving the house. There's a lot of other things that go on. There's a lot of other moving parts in the play, a lot of different plots. But that's the core of it, is that Nora is finding out that she is actually not her own person and figuring out how to establish herself as her own person. And I just think that's beautiful. And while Henrik Ibsen did refer to himself as a humanist, not a feminist, I do think that this is a feminist novel. Or at least a pseudo-feminist novel in some ways. It just shows it's a lot of women independence and how women are not commodities or dolls. We're not things, we're people. Which in 1879 was probably a little bit hard for a lot of people to grasp. Those are the 8 books that I wanted to talk about today. These are some of my favourite books. If anyone wants any videos like this again about books or DVDs, I have a huge DVD collection. I'll happily go into that. If anyone would like a bookshelf tour, I would love to do one of those. Please let me know. I hope that I inspired you to read more, if anything. I hope I inspired you to read some of these books. These are some of my favourites and probably some of the best books that I think I have ever read. Some that I think are so overlooked and underrated. So have a great day. I hope you enjoyed.